My name is Bolaji Owasonye. I'm the chairman of Icpc. I'd like to welcome you to this conversation this morning, which is being held in collaboration with the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. And so on behalf of the two organizations, I thank you for finding the time to join the conversation on COVID-19 funds management and monitoring, preventing a slide to old habits. It's raining heavily in Lagos, at least where I am. And I hope it is not affecting the capability of some of our colleagues to join us. It promises to be a very busy time, but first let's set the ground rules. As my colleague said from the headquarters a few minutes ago, we have muted everybody and everybody will remain muted for the duration of this conversation until we begin to take interventions. There are two ways by which you can communicate with us or to send in information. One is by chat, which I notice a number of people are already doing. The second is by raising your hand electronically. This is a meeting for close to 100 people. I will not be able to see everybody on one screen, but I'm tracking the participants list. And so if you raise your hand electronically, depending on the device that you're using, if you are using a phone or a tablet, to the top right-hand corner, you can tap it. You see a drop-down menu, one of which will be raise hand. Just raise your hand electronically and we can see it. And ultimately, opportunity permitting, we will be able to recognize you and give you a chance to speak. Please, we advise that if you have to move around, you block your video so that it does not become a distraction to the other participants who are in the virtual meeting room. We have about 5 speakers this morning. I can see quite a number of them have joined. They're already in the meeting room. And we're looking forward to a very robust conversation around a matter of interest to all of us. Let me just give a little background to why we're having this conversation. As soon as it became clear that we were in an emergency and a crisis, Icpc in March issued an advisory on response management to COVID-19. This was issued late in March. We followed it up by setting up a monitoring committee to monitor the use of contributions and funds during the emergency, because we know that emergency periods could trigger a higher level of corruption. Thirdly, we appointed observers at the request of the PTF to focus on some key MDAs who will be involved in procurement in response to COVID-19. We followed it up by issuing some prevention guidelines, which were not mandatory, but basically took from existing financial regulations and the extant rules and laws to guide MDAs about what we will be doing, that will be closely looking at what is going on. The Accountant General's Office followed by issuing very comprehensive framework for the management of COVID-19 funds under the Treasury single account. We're happy that that office is in the meeting room and we'll be hearing from them first. Icpc, since last year, has had some collaboration with the National Social Investment Office that is responsible for conditional cash transfer and the school feeding program. And we noticed that there's been a lot of debate about the practicality or otherwise of the proposals this period to continue their activities. So I'm happy to inform you that the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development are also in the meeting room, and they'll be speaking on their strategy on the conditional cash transfer and also the school feeding program. Just as Icpc issued its advisory and set up a monitoring team and also the recommended prevention guidelines, the Bureau for Public Procurement also issued some guidelines to assist MDAs avoid default. We have also invited the BPP. They're in this meeting room. They'll be speaking to stakeholders on what they did and what practical measures. Now, the essence of this meeting, which was initially conceived to guide our own operatives across the country in doing their statutory duties of monitoring COVID-19 funds. But it became needful to bring in a number of stakeholders, especially civil society and the media, to also be able to interrogate some of the measures that are being taken in response to COVID-19, especially the use of public funds and contributions. So the majority of those who are within the meeting room are from the civil society and from the media, apart from Icpc state offices. Somebody has asked the question whether or not this conversation can be reported. The answer is yes, it can be reported. We have a number of media people within the meeting room, and we do not intend to censor what they wish to report of this conversation. That's the response to Kaderia Ahmed. So having given you the background and the ground rules, I will be inviting the speakers. Each person will speak for no more than 10 minutes. And we're going to take all of the presentations in one go so you hold your questions and your comments, which can come either by raising your hand electronically or by sending a chat, which I will try to track in order to give you a chance. I hope we'll be able to take all those who wish to speak, but usually it's sometimes impossible to do so. So in advance, I say you should bear with us. We're recording this conversation for our own internal purposes, but also it is good for all of those who are in the meeting room to know that we are recording. So without wasting any more time, I want to formally welcome all of you, members of the civil society, the media, the collaborating MDAs, and of course, Icpc board members, a number of whom are in the meeting room, and the staff and operatives of Icpc, both from the headquarters and from across the country. I will now invite the Office of the Accountant General. The Accountant General has sent me a message that is on leave. So a director in the Accountant General's office, Mr. Silva Okoliebo, will be making the presentation. You have 10 minutes, Mr. Silva, and we are going to be very rigid with that timing. So I'm going to unmute you from here so that you can have your 10 minutes. I have a timer with me. Mr. Silva, you have the floor. Thank you. Can you unmute yourself? It seems you very good. You have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm actually a man of numbers, I'm not a man of words. So I should be able to be done in less than 10 minutes. Before I start, let me properly introduce myself. My name is Silva Okolebo. I'm director in charge of Treasury Single Accounts. And I actually have with me here the Acting Accountant General of Federation, Alhaji Maman Idris. I also have the director in charge of funds in our office, Alhaji Sabo Mohammed. Let me also welcome other participants, especially members of the press, to this webinar. Now, what we have done when this matter came up and the money started flowing in, and then the concerns of the public we were monitoring it, was to come up with a framework, because we are concerned that if care is not taken, the enormous resources that are being committed to fighting COVID-19 may not be properly managed. So we came up with this framework, and we sent it to Mr. President for approval, and Mr. President graciously approved it. So what I'm going to do is just to highlight some aspects of this framework. First of all, as you can see, the framework is actually built around institutions. We stated it here that all the funds can only be spent on the authority of the appropriation of the National Assembly. And as you know, every fund that comes to government, irrespective of source, as provided in the Constitution, is supposed to go to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And any expenditure from that fund must be on the authority of an appropriation by National Assembly. So it is in recognition of that that we said that this money has to be spent on the authority of appropriation of the National Assembly. Now, the second thing we also did is that in terms of scope, we make sure that we covered every single fund that is coming in, irrespective of source, be it individual donation, corporate donation, loan from World Bank, IMF, federal government funds. All of them, we pull them together and say we are going to account for them centrally and transparently. The idea of using appropriation is because we believe that it provides the highest level of credibility and transparency to management of public funds. And it is also in line with the Constitution. I'm going to go to the area that covers accounting. Now, for us to be able to track every fund or every expenditure from this, from all of these funds, we are going to create a line item in our chart of accounts that we call fund source. That fund source is meant to create a unique code in our chart of accounts or accounting codes that will enable us to track all receipts related to COVID-19 interventions, and also to track the related expenditures. I'm going to also go to transparency, because this is I think the major thing here is around transparency and accountability.
Mr. Koliebo, you seem to be freezing. We can't hear you anymore. Mr. Koliebo, we cannot hear. Okay, so you're back.
And I'm using my phone Wi-Fi. Thank you very much. So, in terms of transparency, what we have done is to say that every kobo that is coming in, irrespective of source, and every expenditure out of it, we are going to be publishing it daily on our transparency portal, www.opentreasury.gov.ng. In addition to that, the MDS themselves, in addition to publishing the summary of receipts and payments from our end, we're also going to be publishing individual line expenditure daily of expenditures out of these funds, so that the public can see what is coming in and what is being spent, which MDA is spending it, and on what, how much that is being spent. This way, there is nothing to hide about the funds that are coming in. Now, in addition to publishing it on the Open Treasury portal, we have also mandated the MDAs themselves to publish it on their individual websites, so that this information is freely available to the press, to the public, and to everybody that's interested. Furthermore, we're also publishing monthly budget performance reports for all public COVID-19 funds. Now, this is also a higher level. You know, the most detailed one is the daily one that the MDS are going to publish. But we're also going to do another monthly summary based on budget performance. This one is going to look at, in aggregate, the amount received, the amount paid, and then compare it to the amount budgeted for each of those lines for COVID-19 intervention. Another very important, and in my opinion, an innovative part of this framework is that we have made it mandatory that MDS should respond to all FOI information within 7 days without any excuse. As I said earlier, the framework is approved by Mr. President. So what this means is that if civil society or anybody decides to file or request for information relating to expenditure, nobody's going to say, I'm waiting for approval, because Mr. President has already approved that the spending units should provide this information whenever it's needed within 7 days. Now, it is also stated here that failure to publish this information on the website or to respond to FOI information or request will constitute early warning signs of mismanagement and shall be deemed as contravention of the guideline. Another thing we have also done here is to strengthen our own internal controls by asking our auditors to make sure that all the funds, whether receipts and payments, are properly audited. This one, there is no time limit to the audit. Even if the audit is not done before the payment is made, or whether it is done before the payment is made, the guideline has mandated them to continue to audit it and check and be sure that every payment is in line with this framework and with extant rules and regulations, and to report if there is any infraction. Now, another thing we have also provided here is that if any MDA fails to publish this information or to respond to FOI request, then we are going to make the name of the MDA and the principal officers public, and so that the public will know who maybe is about to do something untoward about the funds. Now, on a very final note, what we have done here is to give institutions, again, like Icpc, a kind of template they can use to monitor how these funds are being spent, and then be able to play their own roles as anti-corruption institutions in making sure that these funds are properly spent and that there is value for money. We want to make sure that, unlike any other public fund in Nigeria, that this particular one gives the public all the confidence they need to believe that government is able to play its role and to play it responsibly and transparently. So I'm going to stop here. If there is any gap in my presentation, I can take it as questions. Thank you very much, Balaji.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okolebo. I use the opportunity to welcome the Acting Accountant General of the Federation into this conversation. I should have mentioned in my opening statement that 2 of the presentations, one will be coming from the civil society and one will be coming from the Icpc, indicating to some of the MDAs who are here, the media and the civil society, what we intend to do, also using some case studies as our guideline. And I'm sure that you have quite a number of questions for the Accountant General's office and their framework, but I request that you wait until all the presentations have come in. Before I invite the next speaker, I noticed that some people are joining with multiple devices, same person with more than one device. Can you please remove all other devices and leave only the one you are using to attend the meeting, please? Thank you very much. Some people are using multiple devices. I'm tracking. I'll give you some time to remove other devices and keep only one that you are using to connect. If you don't do so, I will remove those devices from here. Thank you very much. I would invite Engineer Isaiah Yesufo of the Bureau for Public Procurement to briefly discuss the guidelines for emergency procurement that has been given in support of the response to COVID-19. Engineer Isaiah Yesufo, if you're in the meeting room, can you unmute yourself? I've been struggling to find you. Engineer Isaiah Yesufo from BPP. Okay, if he's not there, are you there? All right. We will permit Engineer Yesufo once he comes into the meeting room. I would like to invite the first speaker from the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and Social Development. There are two speakers. I have seen Dr. Adebayo in the meeting room, and I have read from Apera Yowa. Both of them are in the meeting room. Dr. Adebayo is in charge of the school feeding program, and Apera Yowa is in charge of the conditional cash transfer. Both of them are very critical social development programs for the government, and they are always in the eye of the storm. I will invite Dr. Adebayo to make his presentation on the strategy for doing school feeding program while students are at home. Doctor, you have the floor. Unmute yourself. You are still muted. Okay, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman. Permit me to rest on our existing protocol. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this meeting today. Since I have just 10 minutes, I'll try and rush through what we are doing as regards the school feeding program. And like you said, we are in the eye of the storm, so we will try to alleviate such, the doubts that people have on the program. Now, following the presidential directive that the school feeding program will continue while there was a lockdown, we had to come up with a plan. And in developing the plan, we had to ask pertinent questions. How will the pupils get their usual free meal during the lockdown? How do we deliver the meals?
That's when you're freezing. We can't hear you.
Hello?
I don't know if the others. Okay.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You are back on.
Yes. So how do we deliver the meals to the pupils while they are still in school? So we had to ask these pertinent questions, and also how do we fund it? What we did was to, first of all, identify what kind of budget are we looking at. First of all, our normal cost for per child on the normal feeding program is 1,400 for every 20-day cycle in school for each child. So fortunately, when the lockdown came up, we still had a fund pot of 20 for a 20-day cycle in the month of April, which we had not expended. So we looked at it that since we have that budget, we can come up with a way to apply it for the delivery of the palliatives during this lockdown based on the presidential directive. So we worked within the existing budget. So that's to say really that the school feeding program itself has not tapped into the COVID fund per se, but we are actually following that directive of this special delivery of the program. So we worked within that budget to come up with what do we provide the children with. We know that we can't take cooked meals to them. We know that we can't call them to school because of the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, which requires social distancing and all of that. So we agreed that we will provide food rations and we had to come up with what would that food ration cost. The total cost for the food rations that we have come up with is 4,200, and it is in the assumption of an average of 3 children per household, basically. So we have also fixed a target number of households across the country, across the various states. This targeted households is based on the pupil enrollments that we are currently feeding. So our total targets that we're looking at is 3,131,971 households. Now the package we are providing in this food ration is actually 1 5 kg bag of rice, 1 5 kg bag of beans, 500 ml of vegetable oil, 750 ml of palm oil, 500 grams of salt, 15 eggs, and 140 grams of tomato paste. That's a total of 7 items. Now, in order to deliver this also, we had to come up with a strategy. How can we deliver this seamlessly and as transparently as possible? So we adopted a timed barcode food voucher system. Now that barcode food voucher system allows us to provide that household with a voucher that they can come, that will validate them to come to a particular designated center to collect their food rations. Now, targeting also is another area we looked at. How do we target? We had to target using the existing school structure. Now, who are we targeting? Our target is actually for children in public primary school 1 to 3. So the households we went targeting for, or that we are looking out for, are households that have children in public primary schools classes 1 to 3. Part of the strategy also was to ensure that we provide the states with the guidelines needed for procurement, security, and distribution. The mode of delivery also is another strategy we had to look into, which is leveraging on existing structure of the program. And the existing structure of the program, because of time, I wanted to initially give an overview of how we deliver school feeding in the first place. But to summarize it, within the program, we have a structure that links to what we call the school community. And this core school community are the SBMC, the School-Based Management Committee, the SUBEB, and many other supporting ministry like the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agri in the delivery of the program. So one of the key strategies is clear advocacy and sensitization. And so that's advocacy and sensitization is done through the structure of the SBMC and local media and the program office within the state. So when we are going into a state, when we are about to start the program, the SBMCs are made up of the PTA, the teachers, the SUBEB, traditional rulers, youth leaders, religious leaders. So they are a community that supports the school structure, monitors the school structure normally on our program. So the state is meant to drive the sensitization and advocacy through this particular people. Now, funding and procurement is also another area we looked at. How do we source for these food rations? How do we buy them? So what we did was to mainly leverage on existing state-approved food aggregators. In the program of the school feeding, we have what we call food aggregators, who are assigned aggregators by the states to mop up key food items within the local agricultural space. So egg through the Poultry Farmers Association, meat through the Cattle and Butchers Association. So these aggregators are the ones we leveraged on to support the purchase of these items. So once the state approves and provides us with the particular team of aggregators that they want us to use for the procurement, we pay those aggregators to source for the funds and to source for the items based on the cost of 4,200 for the 7 items I mentioned earlier. So now, in delivering this program, also in line with the topic that we have today, which is preventing the slide to old habits while delivering the school feeding rations, one of the key areas we look at is public awareness. So we make it known that this is what we're doing. We give that awareness all across on the news, through the social media. Also, we ensure that the items are declared properly. So declaration of items per household. So there's no, everybody knows what exactly each household should get, which is one of the seven, the 7 items I listed earlier. Then validation of the items across all the distribution centers. So at every distribution center, there's a delivery note whereby once the items are delivered, it is signed for by 5 different persons, which include CSOs, security personnel there, our federal monitors and state monitors. Also, we have the voucher collection process. So the vouchers are in duplicates. The one that the beneficiary takes is barcoded. So when they come back, they return that voucher, which is validated through the barcode, and then they collect their items. So those vouchers are available. I mean, if I have time, I'll show you what it's like. On that voucher, the name of the beneficiary is there, the address of the beneficiary, the phone number of the beneficiary, the number of children that the household has is also stated on the voucher. So that information is available to for post-implementation revalidation as well. Another strategy in making sure that it's quite transparent is the invitation of third-party monitors and agencies. So we have different agencies that are working with us. We have different third-party monitors, which include CSOs. We have even, like the chairman said at the beginning, we already have a collaboration arrangement with Icpc. But on this occasion, we invited the DSS. We reached out to a few people. I think there was a time we reached out to say a communication was made actually to SERAP as well, so that they can be part of the implementation of the program. We also have WFP who has supported.
Dotun, you have 2 minutes more. Dotun, you have 2 minutes more.
I'm about to round up. So we have WFP, who there's a NGO that works with them. We have the CSDPs, we have the CSOs, Icpc, DSS, and program monitors as well. So far we have done this in FCT. We're rounding it up in Lagos. We'll be doing it in Ogun State, and then we'll be scaling them up to other states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dotun, for your presentation. We will take the second part of the ministry's activity through Mr. Yowa Akpera. I should inform the House that Engineer Isaiah Yesufu is actually in the meeting room. He was having a problem on muting himself. But rather than interrupt the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, we'll let them finish their presentation. I will go back to Engineer Yesufu. May I invite Yowa Akpera. Dotun, can you mute yourself now? Yowa Akpera, you have the floor. I see you are in the meeting room. If you're having a problem unmuting yourself, just send me a chat so I can try and unmute you. Okay, I think I see you. You are unmuted, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, and thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate the opportunity from the point of view of the ministry. I think for a moment the slide deck will come up, and then we can go ahead. But permit me to give a quick background to the presentation. We'll be talking through the cash transfer program, and like Dotun also mentioned, we have not accessed the basket funds for COVID-19 for the purpose of the cash transfer program, but the director of the Mr. President was quickly taken up by the Ministry of Humanitarian under the direct leadership of Umar Farouk for us to effectively take out the orders of Mr. President. So a bit of background. The federal government, of course, at the coming of the President, Muhammadu Buhari, prioritized social protection as a key strategy to poverty alleviation. And in 2016, in partnership with the World Bank, signed a loan, the National Social Safety Net project loan of $500 million across 5 years. Now, this loan enabled us to establish the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office of the and through that loan also created a National Cash Transfer Office, which I oversee as the oversight and supervisor of that project. Even though we have also a project coordinator that reports to me under that project. Now, the NAS project has the establishing the building blocks for the National Social Safety Net system, and then implementing the targeted cash transfer program. Next slide. So in establishing the building blocks, the cash transfer program takes from the National Social Register, which in itself is developed through a community-based targeting system wherein the community members themselves sit and identify the poor and vulnerable amongst them, that they are then registered onto the National Social Register, from where the cash transfer will mine beneficiaries for the National Cash Transfer Program around the entire country. And the slide before you describe this process. For lack of time, we will not be delving in so much into the details, but we'll go on. Go on. I just quickly wanted to differentiate between the National Social Register and the Beneficiary Registry. So the National Register, it registers individual households and determining potential eligibility. So every member of the household identified by the community come into the social register. The cash transfer we take from this social register and then enlist beneficiaries into the National Beneficiary Register, because the federal government of Nigeria has set up a criteria for the cash transfer program that will only mine information for the poor of the poorest in the social register. These are the people that are being paid the national cash transfer program of $5,000 monthly. Like quickly, I will be able to follow, if you don't mind, so that will save time.
You still have some time.
Okay. All right, so next slide. Now, we deliver the targeted cash transfer divided in two ways. One is the unconditional cash transfer. And this is everybody, like I explained, the poorest of the poor in the social register mine. These are the people that rank between the first and the 6th decile. These people are given since 2016 and ongoing. So when the COVID-19 incident happened, Mr. President then directed that we should quickly not only pay the arrears that are owed the beneficiaries, but also pay 2 months in advance. Interestingly, the directive came and coincided with the March-April payment round of 10,000 naira, and we were owing beneficiaries the January-February payment round. So we then paid the 4 months together, amounting to 20,000 naira to the poor and vulnerable households who were already existing on the program. We are now preparing to pay the 2 months in arrears that Mr. President had directed, even though the process of paying has actually fallen within this May period. So we'll be doing the normal payment that we do immediately as we finish the processes. Now, after the unconditional 5,000 naira, another top of 5,000 naira is paid to these beneficiaries, but this is conditional for them meeting a certain set of conditions. And this depends on a state government deciding which area that is most critical to them. It could be education through school enrollment, which would be a condition upon these poor households to sending their children to school. When they do that, they can access the top of 5,000. Some states are health, and this is conditioned upon the women or accessing health care for antenatal care, also in full immunization of their children. Once they do this, they are entitled to the top-up cash. Now, we are only doing this top-up cash now as a pilot in 11 states, but we'll then scale out as appropriate, cost permitting. Nigeria is also doing what you call the cash plus, which then means that we educate these beneficiaries on some of the funds applications for judicious use of the monies that they're being given, encouraging them to fund, giving them also monies for growth, and we have success stories that are bound, and you can get this information on our cash transfer website, but also on the naps.gov.org website as well. Next slide. Now, how do we ensure transparency, accountability, citizens engagement? Now, the entire NAP structure is built very heavily and several.
Sorry, we're losing you. Yowa, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Apera, are you with us? Sorry, it seems that Yowa is having some technical challenges. Apera, are you there? He had about 2 minutes to go, and I think the network must have created some problems for him. All right, we'll step it down, take off the slide. We'll give him an opportunity to complete his thoughts if he comes back in. Take down this slide, please. Yowa, you can hear me, but we cannot hear you. I can see your chat. We cannot hear you at all. We cannot hear you, and you simply disappeared from the screen. Okay, there you are.
Mute me. You need to unmute me.
Okay, you have been unmuted. Can you finish you have about 2 minutes to go.
Okay, I can finish it very quickly. So the accountability structures are one, internal and external as well. So for the internal, we have our accounts are managed by the Office of the Accountant General through the Project Funds Management Unit, PFMU, and they supply all the accountants and the internal auditors that keep an eye on the spend and also account and report to us. We have entered a memorandum of understanding with the Office of the Accountant General of the Auditor General of the Federation that provides quarterly payment audits to our accounts. And we also have a set of third-party monitoring under the. Now, the government, they also include the Icpc that we're working closely with. But I wanted to talk on the third-party monitoring, which sort of give room for our partnership with CSOs. At the moment, we have
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Supporting us. And before you is the result of some of the CSO monitoring that we have. Now, this engagement with the CSO ensures public accountability from third-party monitors who conduct this thing independent.
We keep losing you.
To the government by Monday. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Apera. We lost a few of your sentences, regrettably. I don't know what's happened to your audio. I was tracking your audio very closely. It kept on dropping off. Hopefully, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions for you when we get to the conversation. We have engineer Isaiah Yesufu with us, as I said earlier on. He was having a challenge with the microphone. I'm looking for him on the screen so that I can unmute him and he can have his 10 minutes with us. One moment, please. I'm trying to track. Okay, there you are. Engineer Yesufu, can you try and unmute yourself? I can see you in a suit. There you are. You have the floor.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to stand on the existing protocol so we can just maintain the speed. I'm here to just make a brief presentation on what we've done so far with respect to the guidelines for the conduct of procurements that respond to COVID-19. Next slide, please. As we all know, the new coronavirus has redefined socioeconomic activity globally, and that includes procurement processes, procurement activities. And several countries all over the world, particularly in the European Union and multilateral agencies, they've evolved new and flexible regulations to cope with the system, particularly in dealing with their procurement activities, because we know that under this peculiar season, we need to keep things to be fast-tracked. Now, these regulations, even though they are ad hoc, they are meant to promote accountability, transparency, and value for money while conducting all these emergency procurement that are associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. We're all aware that because of the crisis we're in now, we need to keep things moving quickly. And all over the world, everybody is doing the same thing, but they've also drawn up some ad hoc regulations that are just for the moment to address all the gaps that ordinarily, if we are to follow the robust procurement processes, it will hinder the procurement. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, one of the things that we have observed is that generally, because of the nature of the COVID-19 and in responding to this pandemic, most of the procurements will generally fall under emergency procurement method, which our own Public Procurement Act has already made a provision. Section 43(1) of our Act has made a provision where a country is faced with a disaster such as this, the processes and procedures that can be adopted. Now, the challenge we have is that procurements that are under emergency are generally, the risks are generally higher than the normal procurement processes. Next slide. Now, why are the risks higher? Because we found out that when you are doing an emergency procurement, there are several approval procedures that are, I won't say circumvented, but they are set aside so that in order to enhance the procurement process to meet the existing emergencies. Next slide. Now, all these prior approvals are not required when you are conducting emergency procurement. Another thing is that under emergency procurement, the Act has given power to ministries, departments, and agencies to, once they identify an emergency, to address it immediately and then seek a retroactive approval after the emergency has ceased. Also, when you talk of compliance checks and regulatory scrutiny, these are carried out after the cessation of the emergency. Another flag that we notice in the emergency is that because of the need for late orders and early deliveries, logistic challenges, price challenges, the cost of such projects tend to be generally higher than normal procurement. And this is happening all over the world. So these are some of the risks that emergency procurements put forward. Now, because of this and because of the fact that we know that under an emergency procurement, the agencies are meant to move immediately. But the Bureau, in trying to be proactive, what we did was to bring up guidelines so that we can try to still introduce some kind of checks. Because if this emergency procurement was something that will happen in the next 2 weeks or 1 month, we would have folded our hand, but it's extending. We don't know how long this thing will be with us. So we decided to introduce guidelines, just like most countries all over the world are doing. Next slide, please. Now, next slide. Now, the purpose of the guidelines that we brought out are to curb some of these risks that are associated with, to curb some of the risks that are associated with the using of emergency procurement. Now, the guidelines are also meant to fast track the delivery of essential goods and services, and at the same time ensure transparency, accountability, and value for money in the procurement process. Now, one of the things that the guideline also underscores is the fact that there are some procurements that are critical. For example, if they have to buy sanitizers, masks, these ones, there are some things that are critical in responding to the process, to the emergency. Such can be done immediately without any process. However, those that are, there are some that we know can be put through some kind of procedure, even though they are emergency. And those are the ones that we have drawn up guidelines, how they can go about it, so that people can still do some form of advertisement, some form of restricted bidding, even though it is an emergency. There are some that they cannot, clearly they cannot do that in some situations. But we know that there are some situations that they can do such procurement. Next slide. Now, the key features of the guideline that I'll just mention a few. The guidelines are available on our website. I'm sure a lot of the media and civil society people have been able to download them. They are available on our website, www.bvp.gov.ng. Now, some of the key features I want to mention now is that all these procurements that respond to this COVID-19 pandemic, the agencies, the MDAs are expected to prepare a procurement plan, an emergency procurement plan. And these plans should be uploaded into the NOCOPO portal, Nigerian Open Contracting Portal. And from there, the Bureau will have access to it. Civil society can have access to it. It's open to everyone. Another thing the guideline is trying to give is that MDAs should not go into contract splitting. Whatever is the cost of the project, put it there instead of trying to split it to evade threshold, maybe so that they can quickly do approvals. Right now, the approval stage is not now, so do the right thing. Don't split the contract, put it as it is so that it will be easy for us to track. Now, like I mentioned before, there are some procurement plans and processes that are not required for services and goods that are aimed at immediate containment and short-term management of the pandemic. Under such situations, sole sourcing is adopted. You just go straight, get a vendor and do the contract, and then get the documents together. At the end of the procurement, once it has ceased, they are supposed to send the documents to us and upload it on the NOCOPO portal. Next slide, please. Now, for open competitive bidding, what we have done is that instead of going to place it on the newspaper for 6 weeks, which would be a disaster if we attempt to do that now, what they are expected to do is to put the advert on the BPP website so that everyone can have access to it. And the tendering period should not be for less than 7 days. They have a week to tender. There are some, like I mentioned before, that can be subjected to this sort of procedures. So those that can be done, they can use open competitive bidding, but it's on our website to be tendered for 7 days. And then where they want to do direct or restricted tendering methods, they should send emails to those agencies, those companies that they want to participate in those restricted bidding, and the tendering period should not be for less than 3 days. Now, in order to avoid this, because of this social distancing and all that, ideally bid opening, you should invite everybody, but right now we're saying let them use a video to cover the process and invite 2 observers as stated in the act. The one, a civil society that is involved in anti-corruption, and a professional body that is related to that procurement that they want to undertake. If they want to buy a computer, they should invite a civil society involved in anti-corruption and someone from the computer society to come as observers, just to enhance the transparency of the process, particularly since bidders are not there. It's good to get outsiders that are not part of their system to give credibility to that procedure. Now, we also said that for restricted tendering, also to reduce the number of documents that they'll be handling, they can limit it to 3 unrelated bidders. But like I said, the responsibility to check all these things at this stage is not at the regulatory point, but it is rather on the MDAs. they should check that the bidders are unrelated. They should check that all those things that the bureau and others will check, they have the responsibility to check at this time. When everything has been concluded and they send the document to us, then we do like a post-mortem and look and see that they adopted the correct procedure. Next slide, please. Again, when they are inviting people, they have the responsibility to ensure that bidders possess the requisite technical and financial capacity, and they are eligible to do business with government, that they are up to date with the payment of their taxes, PENCOM, and all those things that make them eligible to do business with government. The MDAs have the responsibility to check all these things. And of course, when they are evaluating, whatever requirements they put in their bidding documents, those are what they should comply with. They shouldn't introduce any new criteria.
Engineer is there. 30 seconds to
yes,
finish. You have to round up. You're out of time.
Okay. All right, then next slide. They should also ensure that the contracts that they are going to award must be at prevailing market prices. So they must also conduct a market survey so that they are not at the mercy of the prices that the bidders are throwing at them. And of course, they should keep all their documents together, and details of award, they should forward it to the bureau, which we will also publish on our website just to enhance transparency and all that. Thank you very much. These are just about the key features that I can mention. Other things are available on the BPP website, which is there, www.bpp.gov.ng. And for clarification, they can send emails to info@bpp.gov.ng.
Thank you very much, Engineer Isaiah, for your presentation. Before we take the next two, let me inform everybody in the meeting room that we will be sharing all the presentations. If you did not send us your email address before, you can send it. We're recording and we have the data of the charts too. So you can type in your email address into the chat room so that we are able to send all the presentations after the event today to everybody. Thank you very much, Engineer Isaiah. I again urge us to keep our questions until we take the last two presentations. The next presentation is going to be from the civil society. Mr. Larry Suraj, who I notice is already in the room, is going to speak on engaging the civil society for COVID-19 funds utilization and monitoring. A lot of information has been provided here today by the ministries about what they are doing, how effective is that, what will the media and the civil society like to see in order to enable them to do their work and watchdog what is going on. I'm going to invite Larry to take the floor. Larry, I've unmuted you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Prof. Good morning, everyone. Oh, it's already afternoon. It's already past. And thank you very much for bringing this together. I apologize for inability to actually do video. The network is not so strong. So it might actually work worse with the video than just the voice. I'm made to actually talk about the mobilizing the civil society for this, and by civil society I'll do the definition and also the classification a little bit earlier. But I think it is important that we understand under what power or mandate of the government, regulatory and law enforcement agencies are we working on. And I've just listed that to look at this section 6E to F of the Icpc Act, which actually grants the commission the power to actually get information from outside and also relate and network and also collaborate with the public, including the civil society organizations. The new one, which is also subject of the discussion, is the guideline from the Icpc, which is in the management of the COVID-19 Relief Fund, and then also looking at the Office of the Accountant General's framework for the management of COVID-19 fund under the TSA. The interesting good thing about the Icpc Act is that it's made it clear and under the guideline in terms of the monitoring and evaluation part of it, has said that the task force, which is saddled with that responsibility of overseeing the activities would ensure that there's an active participation of individuals or groups outside the public sector, which will assist to enhance accountability, transparency, and promote public participation and contribution. This is very crucial for the engagement of the public. And for me, it is not only just about engaging them for post activities, which is when the deeds would have been done. But it is also important that we engage at this level, even pre some of the activities, to ensure that public participation and contribution is embedded in the design of some of the interventions that would be taken on board by the Presidential Task Force and other MDAs involved in that intervention. It is strongly also talks about, the public access to information and feedback on the emergency response, which is ultimately, according to the guideline, to prevent, suspicion of corruption. And I hope that this will be imbibed by each of the MDAs saddled with that responsibility going forward. The only little appeal that I'm going to make on that is with the exemption. Exemption in that guideline is given to the private sector where they decide to implement without putting the funds or donation into the government coffers, but rather implementing on their own or independently. I would want to appeal that the Icpc should also work with some of the other agencies, FIRS, SEC, and the rest of them, to ensure that these private sectors are also monitored. We have seen on TV where a particular organization, a company, claimed to have donated some items to some communities in the container. And when the container was opened, it was actually filled with empty cartons without the advertised item in them. And we're not going to be oblivious of the fact that some of these donations are not just going for free. There would be some of the tax deductibles that quite a number of them would want to enjoy. So if they're still going to benefit from public gesture on this intervention, then they really need to also be monitored by the law enforcement agencies and regulatory agencies. The Office of the Accountant General's framework for management has its objective, which is premised on the citizens' expectations of the prudent management of funds towards the fight against COVID-19. And it is designed according to the Office of the Accountant General with a high sense, of responsibility towards ensuring the transparency and accountability of the process. This is really wonderful. And we would want to see how the Office of the Accountant General will not just wait for MDAs to do things and then reports will come, but for the Office of the Accountant General to initiate collaboration with civil society organizations and also professional associations, and the same thing with the media, to monitor and promote the transparency and accountable management of these funds as it is designed in the framework. And the crucial aspect for the media and the civil society is the fact that the framework attempted to give another life to the FOI Act by mandating all MDAs to respond to the freedom of information request from any of the civil society organizations or the public generally, individual or corporate, within the 7 days that is being provided. But the only challenge we would have with that is the punishment that the representative of the Office of the Accountant General said earlier, which is to just publish the name of defaulters after the default. No, I think and the citizens and the public would appreciate to see more and beyond that. The names of defaulters should be compliant and the cases should be reported to the law enforcement agencies for proper investigation of whatever could have been responsible, and the appropriate action under the law should be meted out to such officer. Otherwise, you just encourage them to go ahead. Next slide, please. So I've just tried to do a bit of the function and mandate of the civil society and what the civil society has done before, now, and for us to have the networking that we're talking about. You know, it is important for the civil society organization and media not just to look at contract and contractors, because procurement is about the 70% basis for many of the corruption that we experience. So we must understand the beneficial owners of some of the contracts that we would see, and we must be able to also go beyond that and then get relevant documents that are related to the procurement process, just like the Bureau for Public Procurement is also saying now, and they have the guideline that can assist. We need to understand. So before we go to the Icpc, EFCC, Office of the Accountant General, Code of Conduct Bureau, we should understand the power and the mandate of the law enforcement agency or the regulatory agency. So it's not just attempting to give the work of Code of Conduct to Icpc or Icpc to Code of Conduct or the rest, even though they have coordination and networking now, but it is better to direct and not waste the time and the resources of the law enforcement agency. And with the new regulation and guideline and framework, we should then go ahead to activate as much as we can, have that information requested from the MDAs and also other agencies, including the Presidential Task Force itself. And when we have defaulters, we should not shy away from also making it public. We should have confidential reporting to the relevant agencies and also follow up advocacy for public ownership of the process. So if we don't have that response that is expected, we should be able to take it to the public domain, because like you read in the Office of the Accountant General, the purpose is just to build the public confidence and also to ensure that public participation and satisfaction. Next slide.
1 minute more, Larry.
Yeah. Okay, so part of the challenges of this networking is the usual mistrust that we always have with government and also from government to civil society. So we need to find time to deal with this. There's always the time lag between the decision making in the law enforcement and regulatory agencies, which is always sometimes a challenge for civil society. Sometimes because we don't also get feedback from the law enforcement agencies and public offices, which is always discouraging some of them, and the capacity of civil society organizations to take forward some of those issues and sustain them in the public domain. I have just listed what I think are the benefits of networking, both for the civil society and the government, because it is about mutual collaboration, it is about joint efforts, it is about the collective interest of Nigerians. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Larry.
You're welcome, sir.
We'll go straight to the last presentation, which is coming from Icpc. The Director of Operations will be speaking on Icpc monitoring obligation and strategy re-COVID-19. Many of you know that Icpc has a tripartite mandate of sanctions and enforcement, prevention, and then public education and enlightenment. Rather than just do a post-mortem of pursuing money that has been lost, we've decided to be more proactive by cautioning losses, because that is more in the interest of the country. I will invite the Director of Operations to take the floor for 10 minutes. Thank you. You can unmute yourself from the headquarters.
Mr. Chairman, and our distinguished audience, I want to say that global history reminds us of the various consequences of pandemics and their implications for the whole world, especially for the people and the economies. On its part, coronavirus has led to a situation whereby countries are about to spend much more money than they've ever done during peacetime. In fact, they spent money they would ordinarily have spent during wartime in a peacetime like this, when we cannot see the enemy that we are running away from. But the response of government and private sector in Nigeria, as well as the whole world, to the pandemic has been quite encouraging. On the part of Nigeria, the federal government has more or less seized the gauntlet to provide financial and material resources support, has addressed critical medical facilities by provision of funds, and has also provided equipment and palliative materials. Indeed, they say this is a new normal for us in the country, as well as the world all over. In that now we have new social rules, the act of social distancing, as well as people not visiting friends and colleagues in order to avoid the pandemic. Those are steps that need to be taken in this emergency period so that the whole world is safe from the deleterious consequences that the pandemic will wrought on the whole world. In Nigeria, the federal government has taken serious steps to address the pandemic, and at the outbreak of the pandemic in the frontline state of Lagos State, it released a sum of 10 billion naira to the state government, as well as a sum of 5 billion naira to the center, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, to immediately as a special intervention fund to immediately deal with the pandemic problem. Also, the president announced the release of 70,000 metric tons of food from the strategic food reserve to be able to address the hunger problem that the pandemic has brought to the poorest of the poor in our society. As at April 18, 2020, the COVID fund at the CBN, that's a contribution of funds by those in the private sector, had mapped up to about 29 billion naira. And as at the last count, the money is still coming in. At an international level, the United States of America has provided over 20 million naira for Nigeria to tackle the pandemic and associated problems. Largely, 18 million naira is meant for the purpose of taking care of human problems that the pandemic has caused. Now, what is the basis for Icpc intervention? As Mr. Lawrence Raj alluded, we have statutory mandates upon which we have come into all this effort at fighting the pandemic in Nigeria. The Icpc has Section 6. In fact, as a matter of fact, in fighting the pandemic, all the provisions from Section 6A to F are necessary for Icpc to use to address the problem. And we're talking of enforcement, we're talking of prevention, we're also talking of enlightenment. And as you will see, in our intervention, these are the things we have actually dealt with to ensure that we play a significant role in the whole effort towards combating the pandemic. What other things, which financial resources of government, as well as the private sector, is involved? And there's need for us to ensure that there is value for money, not just in terms of the quantity, but as well as the quality of the things to be procured using the COVID-19 fund. Also, there's need for us to ensure transparency and accountability in the use of those funds, as well as to ensure that things that are meant to ameliorate the problems of the people in terms of palliatives actually get to them. As you see, we have ongoing collaboration with necessary bodies, the Ministry of Social Development and humanitarian emergencies and so on and so forth, as well as the NSIO. Though the collaboration with NSIO had been on before this time, it is progressing with the coming in of the global emergency. What was the first thing we did? First of all, needed to let those who will be involved in the expenditure of public funds, as well as money realized from receipts from the private sector, in ensuring that they should avoid situation of corruption risk during the emergency procurement. So I don't just think that, well, it is an opportunity for them to waste public funds. And also they should comply with laid down procedure, get necessary approvals as may be required in emergencies like this. And just like the person from the Bureau for Public Procurement said, in situations like this, we should not delay at all. Also, they should not disregard due diligence in as much as the emergency imposes stress and obligation on us. They should also not neglect post-quarantine management and regulatory controls. They should not ignore financial control regulations and limits. They should also not engage in conflict of interest situation and other corruption ills that are very common in situations like this. Also, Icpc deployed a series of campaigns on televisions and radio, warning citizens against sharp practices around emergency response and publicizing the toll-free hotline for the report of corrupt acts. No doubt some people have made reports to us that we are looking at and possibly looking at the possibility of bringing up enforcement power as the case may demand. The Icpc also established a COVID-19 monitoring team to collaborate with the Presidential Task Force in order to prevent possible financial abuses of funds that may be realized, monitor disbursement and utilization of funds and donations, deploy strategies to prevent incidences of corruption, and complement the PTF to ensure transparency and accountability. Also, the Commission developed what we call the Corruption Prevention Guidelines. Actually, this encompasses recommendations to the PTF in order to ensure that there is transparency and accountability in the process of disbursing the funds realized from the COVID donations. As a matter of fact, the recommendations, as the chairman says, are not mandatory. In as much as we have always had in government procurement regulations concerning how money are spent, that's physical regulation. Our own is just to complement what we have always had and to improve the process for purposes of accountability and transparency, and to want the people not to engage in corrupt practices that the Icpc may eventually find it to come and pick them and investigate them about. As the man from BPP said, it's important that there is strict compliance with Section 43 of the Public Procurement Act and emergency procurement, and the guideline provides for that. On the other hand, we set up monitoring teams in the state offices to monitor the distribution of the palliatives, the food palliatives that the person from the NG, the home school feeding program has talked about. On the other hand, we are not just looking at the enforcement, the preventive power of the Commission. The most critical one for us as law enforcement is at the right time, when we find egregious criminality with regards to the expenditure of the COVID-19 funds, either by NGOs or some individuals, we have to come in hard on those who are involved, in which case people must be prosecuted at the end of the day when we find reason or prima facie to do so. But what have we been doing so far? We have been
2 minutes. No, 2 minutes.
We have been monitoring the release and distribution of grains from the strategic food reserve. Officers have gone to the grain reserve places to ensure that the quantity of food that are said to have been released, actually the quantity of food released, and the quality are also the right quality. We have instances of agencies involved in fraudulent purported procurement of COVID-19 palliatives, as well as the protection equipment and community enlightenment. What we have had in this type of situation is that the agencies, they purport that they are doing procurement for the palliative. Meanwhile, it is not for the palliative, and they're taking millions of money out of that process. I have cases of state government using the COVID-19 pandemic to financially exploit local governments, especially in states where you don't have local government chairman, and what you have is just ad hoc committee, whereby you don't have proper legislative house to determine how much the local government will spend. So the state government are actually exploiting that situation. We also have a case of purported COVID-19 logistic contingency in the federal institutions, whereby monies meant for contingency purposes and emergency and logistics are paid into personal account of staff. This we are investigating. We're also in collaboration with the Nigeria Social Investment Office, Nsio, and other NGOs, monitoring distribution of conditional cash transfer and the distribution of foods under the home school feeding program. In all cases of infraction, we intend to investigate as well as prosecute those that will be involved. On the other hand, with regards to the distribution of food under the school feeding program, we have had instances where we discovered that those who are focal persons in collaboration or in complicity with bank officials have taken money belonging to food vendors in millions. We had instances whereby instead of paying 2.6 million to the vendors, so it was a mistake, the money was mistakenly paid into the account. Bank officials were only giving 260,000 to the vendors, and we are cleaning up the rest. In as much as the preventive aspects concerning monitoring is ongoing, Icpc will definitely bring hammer down on those who are involved in criminality concerning the distribution and the use of COVID-19 funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentations. We've had, within the past 1.5 hours or thereabouts, about 6 presentations, and it's time to get the interventions of the participants. As I said earlier on, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, you have to do electronic show of your hand so that I can see from here who is raising their hands and be able to invite such people. Let's set the ground rules. One is to keep it short and not to give another lecture so that we can accommodate as many people as possible. Only 1 or 2 questions have been sent by chat. One is to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, I think specifically to APERA, on what are the factors used in determining the poorest of the poor. But before we proceed, let me just see how many show of hands we have, and so that we can be fair to people. I have Lukman Adefolahan, I have Kola Oludare, I have Vivian Bello, Grace, Dr. Chinda, I presume, and more hands are up. We're going to do the first round of these first 6 people. Lukman Adefolahan, Dr. Chinda, Kola Oluwadare, Vivian Bello, Nelson Wafo, and Lukman Shafir, in that order, 1 minute each. 1 minute each. Address your question to whoever specifically, or if it's a comment, keep it short. 1 minute, otherwise I shall be forced to mute you. Lukman Adefolahan, you have the floor. You can unmute yourself because I cannot see everybody in one screen. But if you're having a difficulty, Lukman Adefolahan.
Okay.
Very
yes,
good.
Thank you very much, Prof. This is a wonderful outing for all of us. My question is very brief, sir. I would like to know the total number we have on the National Register as well as the Beneficiary Register. I'm happy today we were able to differentiate between the Beneficiary Register and the National Register. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, we'll take all the questions before the responses. Those who will respond already know themselves. Dr. Chinda, you have the floor. Unmute yourself and lowering your hand.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank all the presenters. They've done very noble. My question goes to Mr. Akbare. Just like the other guy asked, I want to find out if these registers are in the public domain. Can we access them? Is this something anybody can go and find out, okay, these are the names listed in the National Social Register and the other? The second question is, what is the criteria for selecting the first 11 states for your pilots, the work you're doing on what is this? The third one, sorry, I want to be very fast. The third one is, it seems like all the monetary activities are directed towards the fund managers and all of that. Is there any plan on monitoring the beneficiaries also? Because I know that the beneficiaries who in this network or in this social net may, with time, slide off that net, go higher in the social cadre, and they probably will not need to be having this same, these leaves that are being given to them. So I'm asking, are there any plans on monitoring the beneficiary when and how they move along the social cadre? And my other question is to the Director of Operations.
You are more than 1 minute, Dr. Chinda.
Sorry. Let me just ask briefly the Director of Operations, Icpc, Mr. Hakim. I want to find out if the experience of the team, it's easy to set up a team and say, okay, go work with these people. And we know the people we are working with are strong people in the public sector. They don't know whether there is any experience they've had that, that will enable them in this decision. If there is also a case where they have been tactically and diplomatically sidetracked, something can be happening and you are there, you don't even know something is happening, and you don't know how to make decisions.
Point made, you're out of time.
The last question.
No more questions.
Just one question for Director of Operations. How soon can we get the these culprits and punishment method, how can it get to the public domain so that we can boost public confidence on the work of the ICPC? I mean, the people who have faulted all of these other things. Okay.
Next person is Kola Oluwadare, please.
Okay,
can you unmute yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. So my question is to the, yes, I'm on mute already. So I think to the speakers of the Accountant General about the framework that has been made to guide the allocations and the disbursements. Would it be possible to include as part of the penalties for MDAs or senior public officers who do not comply with responding to FY request, the penalties stated in Section 7, Sub 5, and Section 10 of the FY Act, and possibly some sort of a restriction of funding to those agencies, as well as possibly the Office of the Accountant General being able to testify or give evidence against such MDAs or public officers in lawsuits initiated by citizens and CSOs to enforce their right to that FY request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will take Vivian Bello.
Thank you very much. Now I have 2 or 3 questions.
Firstly, you have 1 minute. You have 1 minute.
Yes, they are brief. They are brief, sir. My first question is a concern I have with citizens, what persons went through when during the COVID-19, particularly women and children.
Can you speak up? We can hardly hear you.
I observed that immediately the pandemic started, and then there was this announcement that there was going to be a lockdown. Food prices were immediately, not only food prices, other goods and services were hijacked way beyond the reach of the ordinary man, and women and children were particularly at the receiving end. Now, things like a bag of gari that ordinarily we sell for 3,000 became 6,000, 7,000. This was exploitation. What did the ICPC do? Were they watching this trend, and have they done anything, or are they doing anything in this regard? That is one. Then secondly, and quickly, the president some time ago, some weeks back or months back, he did say that he sent a request for some amount of money to be approved by the National Assembly so that they could share to states in order to enable states to administer to citizens to cope with the impact of the COVID. But up to date, many states still claim that they do not have such funds from the federal. And states like Rivers State, the Rivers State governor has come out openly to say that it hasn't received anything, and so it's running on autopilot. Because we are trying to track these funds, and it tells us that nothing has been given to the state. Now, the auditor, the Accountant General, this question is directed to you. Could you please provide clarification on this? Have states been given these funds? And if yes, please let us know and what exactly has been given to them so that we could track. Then finally, thank you. The ICPC, when he was making presentation earlier, he did say that they were running a number of jingles, in radio stations, TV stations, warning that corruption under the cover of COVID is being tracked, and that they were going to prosecute corporates. Now, my worry is that I haven't had any such this. I haven't watched either on TV or on radio. So I just wanted to call his attention, please, which media, where are you running this? Because it appears that persons are taking it for granted and not ICPC is not doing anything. Nobody's hearing from them under the cover of COVID, and so they're just going haywire.
Thank you very much. We're out of time.
Thank you.
I think the last person for this round is Shafil. You can unmute yourself. Lukman Shafil. All right.
Good afternoon, all.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My question goes to Larry Suraj. We all agree that it's a problem of mistrust between the government agency and CSO. What will you advise as in the way to bridge the gap, as in how can we work together to build that mistrust? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I see a few more hands up. Let's see if we can take a few more before the responses come from the speakers. I see Adamu Bello. I don't know if that is Justice Adamu Bello. I see your hand up. Unmute yourself and you can ask your question or make a comment. I see another Bello with hand raised. I'm trying to, very good. You have the floor.
Yes, can you hear me, Honorable Chairman? Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for hosting this meeting. I think it is a very, very, very good event. I want to ask a question to the man from the Humanitarian Ministry. I want to know how they source their beneficiaries of this cash transfer. That is one. And why are food now being sent to households when school children are now on holiday? Schools are closed. These are the two questions I'm asking.
Thank you very much. All right. I think I have some questions from chats as well, but we'll take a few more. I see Saudatu Mahdi. Unmute yourself and ask your questions, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had actually sent the question by chat, and it follows to what my brother Bello is saying. What is the criterion, or what is the justification for targeting children in class 2 and 3 for the pilot feeding out of school, you know? Because I'm wondering what happens to the parents or to children from that same background, and they are not included. What is the value chain? What is the social justice index will take for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have quite a handful. There are one or two charts that came. I see one more hand. Agbosu Remi, unmute yourself and be brief, 1 minute. Okay, I'll unmute you. You are unmuted. Agbosu Remi, please. Seems he's not there. Agbosu Remi. Okay, can we take Ogechukwu Enwelum 1 minute? I'll unmute you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And
you are unmuted. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
on.
All the Icpc for this wonderful outing. It's quite an interesting one, but we want to know that there are quite dearth of information in the public space on some of the government interventions. It's possible that these agencies that have third-party monitors tell us the procedures that they use to reach out to third-party monitors, or also from time to time publish the names of the third-party monitors so that people can reach out to these people to find out what is happening or the information that are available. Again, I want to also find out from the Accountant General's office some of the MDAs that default in replying or responding to FOI requests. Are there sanctions so that it also be a deterrent to some other MDAs? And also MDAs that also default, that their names are made public. Which MDAs have been made public so that CSO can also reach out to these people and find out what is happening? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will take Matthew from The Guardian. I see your hand raised up. Unmute yourself, please, and ask your question very briefly. Are you there? Mr. Matthew from The Guardian? All right. Seems he's not. Are you there?
Myself. Yes,
okay,
sir.
You have the floor. 1 minute, please.
Okay. I wanted to know from the Humanitarian Ministry. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. You have the floor.
Okay. From the Humanitarian Ministry, I wanted to know. Hello?
Go on, please. Matthew, you have the floor.
Okay, I should go on. Okay, from the Humanitarian Ministry, from January till May, how much have been transferred to the poorest of the poor according to the federal government? Because the presentation was kind of vague to me. How much has been transferred from January till date? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Theophilus Abba, you have 1 minute. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have one question. The philosophy behind the school feeding program was to ensure that students, pupils go to school without their parents fearing that their children will go hungry. So the school feeding program was attached to school attendance. Now, what's behind this idea of feeding school children who are at home with their parents? I wanted the humanitarian affairs minister to respond, because if these students are not at school,
the question is already well taken. The question is very obvious, straightforward. Thank you. I think I have two more at the moment. Sorry, Hamzat Lawal, unmute yourself, 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. My name is Hamzat Lawal from Follow the Money. I have two questions. The first question is to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Can you please tell us how much have been spent on the conditional cash transfer? Then the second question is how much have been spent during COVID-19 on conditional cash transfer? And then thirdly, how much has been spent on palliative so far? My second question is to the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. How much have gone into the single treasury account? To be clear, because when I had the presentation,
go on, finish your sentence.
Okay, when I had the speech by the chairman of the Presidential Task Force, he made mention of a figure that have been transferred into the single treasury account. I want to know if there are other money still in various accounts that have not yet been transferred. Thank you.
Thank you. Nelson Nana, please, 1 minute. Nelson Nana, if you are there.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman, for the opportunity. Hello, sir.
You have the floor.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir, for that opportunity. My question goes to the school feeding program. From the presentation, she mentioned that that they have started the program in FCT, Lagos, and the Ekiti State. And I intend to find out how many of the peoples have been taking care within this period, especially at this time of this lockdown period. And they also said that they intend to scale down to some other states across the federation. When did they intend to do that? Then also, they talked about third-party monitors being involved in the monitoring and the distribution of these food items. So how did they get the third-party monitors? What are the methodology? What are the systems? What are the steps that they use to get these third-party monitors in the various states that these food items are being distributed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we need to give some time to those who have their hands raised up. The last question will come from Emmanuel Ejim, 1 minute. Unmute yourself. Emmanuel Ejim, 1 minute. Emmanuel Ejim, are you with us? You have the floor. I unmuted you, you muted yourself again. You have the floor. Are you there? Seems Mr. Ejim is not with us. We are unmuting him and he keeps muting back. We'll go back to all the speakers so that we can finish this, and we need to give them about two minutes to respond. I will start with the director from Accountant General's office. You have the floor, sir, to respond to the issues. Mr. Oliebo. You are muted. We cannot hear you. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Very good.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I can count 4
you
questions.
You have just 2 minutes.
It's all right. As I said, I'm a man of numbers, not words. So we have 4 questions here. I'm going to take some, and then my colleague in charge of funds will also have to take some. The first question is the one around the possibility of including the penalty in section 7.5 of the FOI Act to infractions related to our framework. Now, our answer to this is what we have done is to provide specific guidelines. The agencies that, within whose, if you like, remit, that it falls to take action, should be able to take action based on those. We are not the ones enforcing FOI, but we have made provisions for those. What we have tried to do is to make sure that whenever there is any request for information that is provided without any excuses. The other question is whether we are able to give evidence. Well, why not? We're a government agency, so if we are called to provide evidence, we should be able to provide it. I don't know if I missed anyone there, but this is what I can recollect. The next question here for us.
There were questions about the amount.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. My colleague will take that, and he's here with me. Yeah, but I want to take the ones that has to do with. There's other one that's asking whether we can make the names of MDS that default on FOI, I think available on request or something like that. Well, I hope I got the question right, but as I said, what we are going to do is, if there is any default in providing that information, on if there is FOI request, or if MDS fail to publish the data online as we requested, we are going to make their names public. Now, what happens after that will now be the responsibility of law enforcement agencies. And from what I can see, Icpc is on top of the situation, and I believe EFCC also is on it, and other law enforcement agencies. Now, the remaining two questions, my colleague is going to.
Mr. Silva, you seem to be freezing. Are you still with us? Are you still with us? We seem to have, can you hear me, Mr. Silva? There are still a few questions.
Take care of them. I would suggest that we don't wait for him as soon as he comes back. Yes.
Your colleague is not with you to answer those questions. Hello? Sorry, looks like we'll have to proceed. And once we get Mr. Silva back, we will give the Accountant General's office an opportunity to respond to the remaining questions. May I invite the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs? There are quite a number of questions on school feeding program and charts, including a chart. Mr. Silva, we lost you. We lost you. Are you ready now to close your comments? We will come back to you, please. We will come back to you. Thank you. Diotun, can you take the series of questions and charts that have been directed at the school feeding program, including the complaint by National Association of Parents that they were not carried along, the basis for selection of students, why the school feeding program is proceeding when students are at home, some of the issues I think you mentioned in your presentation, but perhaps you need to emphasize, and then why primaries 2 and 3 only? What about those in upper schools? And then a few other questions that were asked on the school feeding program. Let's see if you can crunch everything into about 2-3 minutes, please. Unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. let me start with, okay, so why primary 1 to 3? First of all, the mandate of the school feeding and the responsibility of the federal government covers primary 1 to 3 in the school feeding program. The idea is that states are encouraged to provide or to support 4 to 6, but as far as the budget plans and the commitment of the federal government is for primary 1 to 3. So when we were coming up with this palliative, it was to target those in that class range. And that's because also, like I said earlier, we are only working on the existing budget. So we don't have a budget that covers primary 1 to 3. I mean, primary 4 to 6. Then secondly, I think someone raised the question about how frequently are we going to carry out this exercise, this special food rations. Well, for now, it is just for this particular term that we have a budget for. Maybe if the president, Mr. President's request that we continue, then we will continue. But for now, we're just providing this for the states. Local media, someone mentioned the question about local media and how are we, that people are saying they are not aware. Well, we are local media. The Honorable Minister has been on various media platforms sharing what we are doing concerning the school feeding program, but specifically local media. FCT, like I mentioned, has started, and even up until 2 days ago, they were still on Mbelembe. They had a jingle that rolls on Mbelembe on a daily basis regarding that is 101.1 FM, regarding what we are doing in the school feeding, and even about the sensitization of the voucher collection by households. Third-party monitors. Well, okay, the ministry, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Disaster and Social Development, actually has a dedicated COVID third-party CSO engagement. And I think a number of CSOs are actually collaborating with the ministry to support monitoring across all the various programs that the ministry is handling. But specifically for the school feeding, WFP played a major role by providing, there's an NGO, which I mentioned, the CCDRN, who are very active in the implementation that we're doing right now. We have various other CSOs. Now, school feeding as a program also has a collaboration with quite a number of civil societies and NGOs, ActionAid and the likes. So they are also on ground, specifically in some states. Now, each state also has specific NGOs that they collaborate with. Some ActionAid, for instance, works with us in and Ogun states, for instance, and they monitor the program for us in those areas. Now, on PTA, now, yes, we did not approach PTA on a national level, but we are trying to make sure we do that. But this program, which is more localized in the states, like I mentioned earlier, has what we call the SBMCs. So the SBMCs are the ones who constitutes also the PTA, the Teachers and the Parents Teachers Association. So the states are usually responsible to communicate with those bodies within the state structure, not just the PTA, also the community members of those communities where the schools are. Now, that also brings me to the question about reaching remote areas. Now, the school feeding program is stretched across all the local governments in every state across the Nigeria. All the 774 local governments are covered on the school feeding program. So the schools are actually already community schools. The schools are actually within remote areas. So even the cooks that are recruited for the program are actually recruited within the community. So it's that same structure. What I didn't mention earlier is that the cooks are also playing a role in identifying these children and in the targeting process of the children in those communities. And the food palliative is taken to centers very close to those communities, and they are usually done in school compounds. So that's where they go to pick their food. when they have their vouchers received. I mentioned that, okay, like I said, it's not primary 2 to 3.
30 seconds, Doctor.
Yes, and then this is the voucher that I was talking about. This is the kind of voucher we use for, an example of the voucher that is used for the pupils there. I hope I covered everything within that time, I think.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
One more, sir. The issue of 3 million people, sorry, sir, I think this is important. We're not feeding 3 million children. We're taking palliatives to 3 million plus households. So the children are more within those households range, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending. But our target is households, not pupils within that class range. That's to address
Thank you very much.
School children. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You may wish to scan and email the voucher. If you want people to see it, we will circulate it since we have the list of all those who are participating. I would also make some acknowledgements in my closing comments. Can we invite, if the Accountant General's office is ready, they can close their comments. Otherwise, I will call Mr. Apera. There are quite a few questions that were asked on the conditional cash transfer. Yowa Apera, you have the floor. Can you unmute yourself and respond to the questions on the conditional cash transfer? Apera, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you, Bolaji. So on the chat, you will see I have shared with you a NASCO editorial that prescribed the way the social register is being raised. For the, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
There's something wrong with your microphone. It mutes itself. Apera, there's something wrong with your microphone. You are not muted from our end, but we cannot hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes, maybe you are too far back from your, can you just move close to, yes, move close to your device to respond to the questions. Thank you.
Okay, so very quickly on your chat group, I've sent the method for raising the social register. It's right there with you. And yes, the information can be accessed for each, the social register is raised by the various states. And the offices of the state operations and coordinating unit responsible for raising the social register is domiciled in the Ministry of Planning, reported to the Permanent Secretary of each state of the Federation. And they have the state social registers that can be accessed by anyone who goes to them. And on our website, naps.org, I wanted to share the screen, but I can't share the screen. But I will send on the chat group the latest figures as of 18th of May of the social register content. So we have about 3.38 million as of the 18th of May. I'm expecting the latest report today that I'll also share through you of the numbers across the Federation. Of this, about 2.3 million are eligible for the cash transfer program. To answer the direct question of how much was paid between January and the April payment round, we had earmarked in excess of 14 billion naira to be paid to beneficiaries. This has been done. The reconciliation is now happening between the National Cash Transfer Office and the payment service providers. And I'm sure in the next week, we should finish with the reconciliation with the banks, with the payment service provider, and that figure will be ready.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we're losing you again. Are you done? We're losing you again. We can't hear you.
The question on the CSO, we can publish the names of the CSOs. And when I share the slide deck, you also see my email address. And I'm happy to also share the names and the contacts. Share the names and contacts of the CSOs that are monitoring the cash transfer to you, and you circulate to participants as well.
Thank you very much.
They will be disseminating the report of the third-party monitoring in the next week or two, and that information will also go public for public attendance, because we have told them to host a
It's a shame that we keep losing Apera. All right, Yowa, sorry, we kept on, your voice kept dropping out of the meeting room. But
I'm saying the CSOs will do a town hall meeting for the reports to disseminate in the next week or two.
Thank you very much.
That will be circulated also through you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. I think there were a few questions for the Director of Operations, and maybe one or two for Larry, and I think one for Engineer Isaiah Yesufu. Engineer Yesufu, if you are there, do you want to respond to the question to the BPP?
Yes, sir. I didn't get the question to the BPP. I took all the questions. I don't see anyone that is actually asked, except.
I see. Okay, fine. Let's move to Larry, and then the Director of Operations will close it before I make some closing comments. Larry, there was a question addressed to you. Unmute yourself, please. Larry Suraj, are you with us? Larry Suraj, are you with us? I can't see you in the meeting room. All right, let's go to Diops at the headquarters. Maybe Larry will come back into the room.
Thank you very much.
You have the floor.
I think the first two questions were asked by our honorable member, Lady Chinda, and she wanted to know what sanctions would be available for those who have committed corruption with regards to the NSIO scheme. Well, I should say here, without trying to let out strategies for investigation, that ordinarily investigation takes time. We need to invest necessary facts, as well as call people to come and make statements, because we don't make conclusions immediately we arrest and say this person is guilty. This is still going through process, and definitely it takes some time. There is no need for us to hurry over things that involve people's life and freedom. Therefore, we need to be methodical about it. We cannot put a certain time to a conclusion of investigation, but we will progress because it's quite important for Nigerians to know what we are doing, and those that are culprits that may be punished. Now, how effective are the Icpc monitoring team? Well, I must make an explanation here. We're talking of two teams in this regard. We're talking of the first one that involves monitoring of distribution of palliatives in the state offices. For those ones, definitely the CSOs and NGOs are collaborating with us to give us information on what is happening with regards to this scheme. And those information, as at the moment, is being collated for necessary action. On the other hand, we have a monitoring team set up specifically for the purpose of the COVID-19 fund monitoring in collaboration with the PTF. And for that one, we are looking ahead for the PTF to post our men, those constituting the team, to relevant ministries and departments and agencies of government, specifically to monitor procurement processes. They're not going to get involved. They're going there to observe what is happening. And at the end of the day, even after the observation, we'll call for documents to see that in the process of procurement, everything as expected, the purpose of transparency, accountability, and integrity of the process is done. Thereafter, we can follow up with enforcement activity if we find a situation whereby some persons have used the emergency period for their own benefit. On the other hand, a participant wanted to know whether we have enlightenment program on TV. Yes, we have on TV, and the theme is COVID-19 must not be used as an excuse for corruption. It's been running on NTA, prime time, national television. Maybe the participant will just have to take more time to look at the programs that we're engaged in. But I think the Our Director of Public Enlightenment would like to make further input in that regard. Another issue was raised before I go to Madam. Somebody was saying why during COVID-19 prices of commodities soared. Yes, it's all about a situation of demand and supply. It's just natural economic principle. But Icpc is not a price regulator, it's not a price monitor. What Icpc can do under its act is to find out a situation whereby persons have inflated cost of goods with regards to contracts of government that are likely to have in this kind of COVID-19 engagement with regards to procurement process that will take place using the COVID-19 fund. Thank you very much. I would ask Mr. Fodra to please make further comments with regards to the our advertisement.
Thank you very much, Diobs. Director of Public Education can make a few comments before I go back to the Accountant General's office to finish their comments. Director of Public Enlightenment, please.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rashida Tokodo, MNI. I'm Director of Public Enlightenment. In addition to what our Director of Operations had said, we have on radio, and specifically that is Radio Nigeria, FM stations across the country. We have in all community radio stations, Freedom Radio Kano, Express Radio, Arewa Radio, Arewa 24. These are radio stations that are affiliated with the Presidential Task Force on the COVID-19 response. And we are running the jingles in collaboration with NOA. And we know the reach of NOA throughout the country. And like my colleague had said, Diops had said about the one running on television. I want to use this opportunity to thank both NOA, these radio stations, and NTA particularly for running all these jingles for us. And I want to reassure the person who raised the issue. For each of the jingles, we broadcast our toll-free line, 0800-2255-4272. That number has been ringing since these jingles have gone out. So we know that the jingles are, effective and reaching Nigerians. So this is the brief on the jingles that we'll be running. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director of Public Enlightenment. Mr. Okolebo, I'm back to you, please. Can you finish your comments on the questions that were asked on disbursements to states? Unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so unfortunately, my colleague is still not around, but I'm going to answer based on the information that I have, which I believe to be reliable. If there is any gap, we can always close it after this meeting. Now, on the release to states, the process is still ongoing. Apart from the form 10 billion naira released to Lagos and 5 billion naira to NCDC, we have not made any other release so far, but we are working on it. Then concerning monies received into the TSA in connection with the COVID fund, we have received through if you look at our framework, we mentioned that 5 accounts were opened in commercial banks. So through those 5 accounts, we have so far received 792 million naira. Yeah, and is already on the transparency portal. And the federal government has also released 34.4 billion. Now, there is also the major component of it, the COVID fund, which, as you know, is being coordinated by the Central Bank of Nigeria. My colleague who should have the current value of that is still not here. But as you can see from the framework, as at the time it was done, it was approximately 30 billion. So these are the information I have concerning this at the moment. We can always continue to update it. Check our Open Treasury portal for updates.
I think the Open Treasury portal, which is live, will carry the information on the updates within those accounts.
Yes,
and
definitely.
The public can monitor. Larry Suraj. Thank you very much, Mr. Kulebo. Larry Suraj, are you in the meeting room? Can you respond briefly to the question that was asked on the FOI, I think, from you? Can you unmute yourself? All right. I think Larry is not with us. Let me make some closing comments because we already passed our time and we wanted to keep this within a 2-hour period. Let me thank all of you for the questions, the comments, and the observations that have been made. First, if we have your number with WhatsApp, you must have received all of the presentations by now. The presentations have been sent out by WhatsApp to everybody. We have also received a number of email addresses, and I think that they will be circulated also via those email addresses. But the WhatsApp has already been done. I've received virtually all the presentations right now on my phone. Secondly, there was a question about the monitoring of private sector contributions. Those funds are not, as I understand, are not in the hands of government. Government makes a request about areas of support, and the contributions from the private sector, which is entirely within their hands, are then used to provide those things. So all of the contributions that have been announced, the cash has not been given to government from what we understand. However, there is room to monitor those contributions as well in order to validate the value of the contributions so announced. So if a company announces as part of its corporate social responsibility a support to government of ₦1 billion, obviously it's going to get a tax rebate on that. And that is after the event, we're able to work in with other people to audit, to make sure that the government received that value, because it could be an avenue for abuse. So that's my response. Secondly, there was a question about punishing those who default on FOI. The legislative framework for the FOI is domiciled within the Federal Ministry of Justice. And I think the Accountant General's office needs to work with the Federal Ministry of Justice in this regard. The law is very clear about that. The DOPS has already responded to the question about prices going up. That is for consumer protection to deal with. We're not a price monitoring institution, even though everybody can see that prices go up. And this is a response, the law of economics. There isn't much that we can do about it. There was a question that was asked, and I think the Director of Operations also tried to answer that question about timelines for investigating ongoing cases. And I think I will just put a footnote to what he has said, which is absolutely correct. Investigations take time because the outcome would affect the constitutional liberties of people. And this is why it is very, very important. And a preemptive release of inaccurate or incomplete reports can damage people's reputation that may never be recovered or repaired. So we tend to be circumspect about jumping out to conclusions without getting a chance to do a proper investigation. But I think the audience in the meeting room have been informed of some ongoing investigations and some models. Our involvement and this activity is part of sounding an alarm and creating an awareness that there will still be a review, there will be monitoring. And we believe that it is already working to the extent that when we released our advisory, set up our monitoring team, we got feedback that there was some caution in proceeding hastily without setting in place safeguards. And we can see from the framework from the Accountant General's office that this is a strong measure towards putting transparency to the whole process. I want to acknowledge the role and support of MacArthur Foundation in particular in encouraging its grantees, virtually all of whom, those who are focused on this issue, and some of them media and those involved in investigation journalism, who are in the meeting room to join this conversation and for alerting them to it. We also want to thank the BPP for the collaboration that we have with them. We did a capacity building for the monitors before we dispatch them to to be observers at the various agencies. BPP was part of that capacity building some weeks back before they went to commence the assignment with PTF. And we also want to thank the Accountant General's Office, with whom we have a relationship as well, pushing towards more and more openness and transparency. And that we can see is already happening with the measures that have been taken in recent times. I want to thank all of you, the media participants, the CSOs, the operatives from the various state offices, for being a part of this conversation this afternoon. And to thank also the board members and the staff from the headquarters who were able to join the meeting. Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yes, please, Justice Bello.
Hello.
Yes, Justice
Honorable
Bello.
Chairman, I think the men from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs have not responded to vital questions. One is why is the school feeding program going on while schools have been closed and children are now at home? First, second is how do they source their beneficiaries for cash transfer?
Okay, all right. So they will give those two responses and then we'll close the meeting. Dotson, you have the first one. Why is school feeding going on during close of school? Briefly.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, basically, first of all, Mr. President gave that directive. Two, the main reason is also because that they were meant to be in time when the lockdown happened. And so we normally used to feed, so we had to come up with this plan. But let me say this, I think the COVID situation has brought about a unique challenge across the world. And I'm aware that even in other countries, America, some parts of Africa, they are looking at how they can support, especially the children that benefit from school meals. So what we are trying to do is to work around the best approach to make sure we can still provide this. But the essence was that the schools were, they were at home. I mean, the schools were shut down during the period of their term. And of course, we know the effect of the lockdown across many households. So it's a palliative support within that range, but targeting schools and households specifically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yawa Pera, the question. I hope you have not left the meeting room.
No, I'm right here.
Hello, Prof. Okay.
Yeah,
Please,
I'm here. I'll refer to just for lack of time to look at the chat group. I have sent the mechanism for raising and identifying eligible beneficiaries into the cash transfer program through the National Social Register. I've sent that through the cash group, through the chat group. So it is right there. You see it as
is that the numbers? Is that the document titled "Numbers on NSR"?
No, it's a document titled NASCO advertorial.
Okay, I've seen it. It's in
NASCO
the chat, and I think
advertorial.
everybody
This was also
has access
published
to
in the Daily Trust This Day newspaper of May 18th or May 17th, I think.
Okay, don't worry. I think that if you also forward to my office, we'll distribute it by WhatsApp, because once we close this meeting room, I'm not sure people will have access if they're unable to download it now. So we will circulate it to everybody that is part of this meeting that has been invited to the meeting. I'm afraid we have to close this meeting at this moment. Thank you very much for all your contributions, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.